Okay, for syntax at home this week, we're just going to review drawing some trees, and then we're going to talk about what recursion is. So the first thing, let's go ahead and start out with a sentence that we've treed before, something that looks familiar. The dog ate my homework. So with all of these sentences, feel free to go ahead and pause the recording, write them down, try to draw your own tree, and then you can push play again and revisit, and we can do it together. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the dog ate my homework. Let's get a pen. Got the, dog, noun, ate, verb, my, determiner, homework, noun. So the next step we need to do is we need to find the root of our sentence, so go ahead and divide it right here between dog and ate. And then we start drawing our tree at the end. So I've got an N, I know I have an N bar. I've got nothing else that's going to be between my N and my determiner. So go ahead and go straight to your NP. My NP is allowed to own two things. It can own a D and it can own an N bar. So we've got that taken care of. Let's go ahead and move over. So I've got a V, so I know I must have a V bar. My V bar actually needs to take care of my NP. So that tells me I need another V bar before I get to my VP. So this V bar takes care of my NP and my V bar. And then I can go ahead and go up to my VP. And so I've taken care of my entire predicate. So let's go ahead and move on to our subject. Again, I've got an N, so I know I have an N bar. And then since I don't have anything else, I can go straight to my NP. My NP is allowed to own two things, my determiner and my N bar. So now it's time to tie it all together. Your TP for your tense phrase. My tense phrase is allowed to own two things, first of which is my NP, second of which is my T bar. T bar owns two things, my T and my VP. So your sentence should look something like that. Let's go ahead and look at an example that's got an auxiliary verb in it. So if I've got my, I have a determiner, cat, noun, is, auxiliary, and then sleeping verb. And so now we need to find the root of our sentence. I know we've talked about the root being before the verb, but the auxiliary is a helping verb, and so our root actually breaks before our auxiliary even. So now let's go ahead and start drawing our tree at the end. It's a rather simple tree. I've got a V, so I've got a V bar. I don't have anything else that needs to be contained in my VP, so just go straight up to your VP. So I've reached my VP, so go ahead and jump over to your subject. I've got an N, so I know I've got an N bar. I don't have anything else that needs to be taken care of. So now you can go over to your NP. My NP is allowed to own two things, my D and my N bar. So now I've reached my NP and my VP. So now we need to go ahead and tie it all together. Get your tense phrase. My tense phrase is allowed to own two things, my NP and my T bar. My T bar is allowed to own two things, my T and my VP. And so since we have an auxiliary, this is one of the times that we fill our T spot. Anytime we have an auxiliary verb or a modal, you go ahead and fill the T spot just like that. Now let's go ahead and look at one of our ambiguous sentences. I have a goldfish bowl. And so when we actually write it out into English orthography, it's pretty clear which one we're talking about. Because in the first sentence, goldfish is one word, a compound noun. And in the second sentence, it's two words, an adjective and a noun. But we'll still go ahead and tree it just so you can see the difference. Ooh, and we forgot the word I. Let's go ahead and add that in. have our subject. There we go. Sorry about that. So now we need to go ahead and label all of our words. So I is our noun, have is our verb, a, determiner, goldfish, noun, bowl, noun. Let's go ahead and look at another sentence. Noun, verb, determiner, adjective, noun, noun. So let's go ahead and start treeing the sentence on the left. So I've got an N, so I know I have an N bar. I've got something else that needs to be taken care of, so I know I need another N bar before I go ahead and get up to my NP. So again, I've got an N, so I know I have an N bar. This actually goes up to its own NP, and this NP is owned by this N bar. And then I've reached my NP, so my NP is allowed to own two things, my D and my N bar. So if we're looking at constituents, we can go ahead and pull out bowl. I have a bowl. I have a goldfish bowl. But if we were to just say, I have a goldfish, it doesn't pull out in the same manner. It doesn't hold the same meaning. And so what happens is we look at this to hold a constituent, this to hold a constituent, and this to hold a constituent. So as we go up, as we build up, because remember my N bar owns my N and everything my N owns, this N bar owns this NP and everything it owns, this N bar and everything it owns. So now, I've reached my NP, but I'm not done, because I'm in my predicate, so I need to end on a VP. Oops, I didn't change my pen back to green. So V, I need to go up to a V bar. But since my VP contains something else, I need another V bar before I get to my VP. And then my V bar owns two things. This whole NP, a goldfish bowl. And then our subject's nice and simple. N bar, NP. Alright, tying this all together is going to be a little tight. Got my TP, which owns my NP, which also owns my T bar. T bar owns a T and a VP. So it should be something like that. Now, let's go ahead and look at our goldfish bowl. So we've established where our subject and predicate break. We've labeled all of our words, so let's go ahead and start at the end. So this part's just the same. So we've got the N to the N bar to the NP for fish, and in bowl I've got the N to the N bar to the N bar. But now we'll see where things start getting different. When we've got the adjective, so I know I have to go to an A bar to an AP. So in order for my AP to attach in, I'm going to need another N bar before I get to my NP. Finally get to my NP, that's what contains A, an n-bar. So this n-bar owns everything, gold, fish, and bowl. So you can say, I have a, remember constituencies, I have a bowl, I have a fish bowl, I have goldfish bowl, I have a goldfish bowl. So now we need to tie in our verb phrase. So now it's going to look the same as, oops, I keep forgetting to go back to green. Now it's going to look the same as it did on the other side. Up to our VP, and I've run out of room, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys finish that one up. Alright, now let's go ahead and look at this. This is just going to be a noun phrase, but we're going to look at how where we attach old can change what modifies what. So again, we need to figure out what do we have. Got an adjective, noun, conjunction, and noun. And we have the same thing on the other side. Adjective, noun, conjunction, noun. And so let's go ahead and start on the left again, where old modifies both men and women. So old is having to modify both. So we've got n to our n bar. Same thing's going on the other side, n to our n bar. And these have to come together up into their n bar together. And this is where my conjunction attaches, right here at this n bar. So let's go ahead and look at, I've got an adjective, so I know I have an a bar, which goes up to my AP, which tells me I then need one more n bar. So this n bar can own my AP before I get to my NP. So what we have going on here is my NP owns one thing. My NP owns my n bar. My n bar owns two things. My n bar owns my AP and my n bar. This n bar actually owns three things. Remember, conjunctions are an exception. It owns this n bar, and it owns this n bar. This n bar owns this n bar owns this n, and we're done. Now let's go ahead and look at the other side, where old is only modifying men and not women. Alright, to save some time, I went ahead and just took care of it while I paused the video. So let's go ahead and talk through what we just did. So I've got my NP that owns my n bar. This n bar owns three things. It owns this n bar. It owns my conjunction, remember that's the exception. And it owns this n bar over here. And so let's talk about this first n bar over here. And so this first n bar is actually what owns this AP and this n bar. Because what's happening is, if we look at our constituency test, we can pull this one out, old men, and we can pull this one out, women. So old men acts as one constituent, women acts as another. Whereas if we look at where our AP attaches over here, this constituent here tells us old men and women. So old men and old women. Whereas on the right we just see old men and women of any age. So it depends on where you go ahead and attach in your AP. Now let's just take a brief moment to talk about recursive rules. Go ahead and make sure you read that section in your textbook. But when we're talking about recursive rules, we're talking about how we can create sentences of we can create an infinite number of sentences of infinite lengths. So we can keep adding in and adding in and adding in phrases adjective phrases, prepositional phrases, noun phrases. We can just keep adding to our sentences, and what happens is things keep owning other things. So because of our hierarchy, we'll see things like this. Oh, that phrase is really hard to see on there. We'll see things like, this N-bar owns handsome and boy. This N-bar owns intelligent and handsome boy. This N-bar owns kind-hearted, and this N-bar which owns intelligent, handsome boy. All before we get to our NP, which is the kind-hearted, intelligent, handsome boy. And so this is one of the reasons that we like N-bar theory so much. Because if we didn't have N-bar theory, we would essentially have two options. Each of those N-bars would have to be replaced with an NP, which doesn't quite fit right. Or we would have one NP that would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 branches off of it. And we've already talked about we like the binary branching system. So make sure you go ahead and read those couple pages on recursive rules in your text. See you next week.